Alright, so in the last video we went through the theme itself and how to customize and add a new one. We're going to do kind of the same thing now, but with plugins. So plugins work a very similar way, and they just add functionality to your website. And no matter what theme you're using, you can switch your theme back and forth. Your plugins will always stay on. So let's take a look at what some of those are now. I'm going to show you some of the ones that I would recommend, and I'll kind of show you how to set them up as well. So if I go over here on the left-hand side to plugins, it works the same way as most of the other flyout areas here, where you can see it says install plugins, we can add new, or we can edit them. So we're going to work on just taking a look at just what comes pre-installed into WordPress. So by default, at least as of I don't even know how long, many years now, they have always had these two plugins. And really, Hello Dolly I never used. It was kind of a, I don't think, kind of a joke by I think the developers of WordPress originally, where it'll give a random Hello Dolly quote from the play throughout the back end of the website here. Really, I kind of go in and just delete that for the most part. It's never had an update as far as I know. Really poses no threat, but it just kind of, I don't know, no reason to really have it. Now, Ask Commit, that's actually a great plugin. That's going to help prevent some of the spam coming to your blog. When you have comments available for people, there are a lot of spammers who are going to want to get in there and get their links in there and do different things. I would highly suggest go ahead and activating that and then registering for it. So the way that you do that is once you have a plugin installed, all you have to do is click on Activate. And each plugin is going to work a little bit differently here as far as how it works. But once you activate it, a lot of times you're going to see now the option to either deactivate or go into the settings. So for this one, we can go into the settings and take a look. And this one's asking you basically to register. What you're going to do is you can register for Akismet. And you basically give them your information about your website and your email, and it's going to ask you to donate a certain amount of money, and you can choose anywhere from $0 to I think like $1,000 or something crazy like that. Now, if you have more than one website, I would suggest doing the paid version so you can have a couple different Akismet keys. If you have a site that's actually making money, they recommend I think they basically say that you are supposed to pay for it if your site is making money. If you just have a generic blog, then you can get away with a free one. It's kind of up to you. It's kind of on the honor system. It is a great plugin, so I definitely support them. I do pay for a multi-seat license every year, so it definitely works, and I appreciate the services that they provide. So basically, you can go in and just go ahead and register. You'll get your API key. It'll walk you through all the steps here, but that's a good one to definitely start out with. Like I said, especially if you plan on having comments on your website. If you don't, you will start to see a lot of comments coming through, a ton of spam, and you're probably going to get overwhelmed by it and be like, all right, I finally got to register for this. So for all my blogs, I always have this one. Again, it's not being paid to saying this. You can see it's actually part of WordPress. They have it pre-installed in there. Definitely a good one to have, but again, don't feel obligated to activate it or pay for it, but it's well worth the money. So let's go back over to plugins over here, and we can add new. And they're going to show you a couple of the big ones or the kind of more popular ones. But just like the themes, we can go and search the WordPress database for all different plugins, and we can add some really cool functionality to our website. And you can search from a couple different ways here. Again, it pulls up, these change from time to time. You can see Akismet's up here is one of the primary ones. You can install Jetpack. That's a really good one. We can take a look at that one. bbPress, which is like bulletin board. If you went like the old days of the internet when people were using bulletin boards a lot, we still use them here. It's still good for forums and things like that. But BuddyPress, where you can have basically like a multi-user community website. That's kind of a cool one. You can create your own little social media kind of website. Gutenberg, that was one of the things that we saw when we first logged into here. They're asking people to install that. It's kind of be part of the new version of WordPress, I believe. A lot of people aren't liking it. Some are. Sometimes it just takes a little bit of a learning curve, but whatever. So some of the ones that I like to install myself, and you can either search by keyword or by the actual plugin name itself here, is Backup WP. It stands for Backup WordPress. And what that's going to do is make a backup of your copy, and you can schedule your backups to happen daily, weekly, monthly, however often. You can back up just the files, just the database, or both. Now, there's always going to be times when you're going to want to maybe possibly have to refer to a old version of your website. Let's say your website gets hacked, or maybe you make some kind of mistake in your pages and you have to revert to something that you deleted by mistake. There's also times too where maybe you update a plugin. Plugin updates come out all the time. I'm always updating those because there's always new versions, new features, new things that they are doing to improve from being hacked, things like that, that you're going to want to update those plugins. And every once in a great while, there's a plugin that just conflicts with everything else on the website and kind of shuts it down or causes really funky coding going on. And you may have to go revert to an old version of the plugin. So I'll download a backup of the website, put the old plugin back in, and that's very, very helpful to have. So for this one, let's go ahead and install this. And then once it's installed, you got one more button you got to push here to activate it. So it's either install and just keep it, or activate it and actually use it. So you can see when I have an active plugin here, it actually turns blue, so I know which ones are active, which ones are not. And with Backup WordPress, this is the one that I was saying that's the only thing that I usually go into tools for, and that's going to go over backups. So this one's really simple to use. Now there are other options. Again, I'm not being paid to say any of this stuff. This is just the plugins that I use most often. You can see this is free, so again, I'm not going to get anything for it. These are just the ones that I recommend. There are other backup plugins. There are ones that do even more cool features. Use what you feel is you're comfortable with. If you're just getting started, this may be a good area to start with. And then if you're still looking for added features, you can go on and explore with other plugins and just see what else is out there and play around with them. But for this one, I can go into here and I'll always change the settings. So if I go into settings first, and I'll say, what do I want to back up? Do I want to do the database, just the files, or both? And I'll usually say both. And then schedule, you can either schedule it to automatically happen once a week, once a month. You can see you got all your options here, or just manually only. So like only when you want to manually go in and make an update. So if this is a blog that you're not in very often, maybe just set it to go manual. And anytime before you go and make any kind of updates to the website, you just manually make a backup of it. If it is something that you're working on all the time, you don't even want to have to think about it, just schedule it. Have it do once or twice a week and say, hey, just store like 2 or 3 versions of it so it's not just overwhelming your server and just having a ton of files on that server. Just have it just like 2 or 3, and it's going to delete the old ones, keep the new ones, and you're all set. Once you hit done, you can hit run now. It'll make a backup of your website, and again, just kind of has in this nice little package that you can download or keep right there on the server. Great plugin. Another one I would highly recommend, and I'll go back to plugins and add new, is going to be Yoast, and that is for your SEO, and that's going to do a couple different things for you here. And we're going to get into SEO a little bit later on in this series, but for right now, I would say go ahead and install Yoast. And I'm going to activate that. Now what that's going to do is a couple different things for us. And again, we're just going to touch on what it's doing for the most part right now, and we'll get into some of the advanced features later on when we get into SEO. So now that I've got that installed, I'm going to go over to posts. I'm going to add new. And what you're going to see that's a little bit different this time is below the blog post, you're going to see this Yoast SEO option down here. What this is going to let you do is actually customize how your post appears as if it were in the search engines. Now, as of right now, you'll see that this is it has no title, so it's just coming up with the domain name. So if you were in Google, you would notice it looks almost just like this. So let's say, so in Google, it may show up as this is my first post - online marketing concepts. So that might be a good title. And then the actual URL or the link that would go to it, that display is fine. But now I've got no copy down here for that little snippet, that little bit of information below the post or the Google search results. So I can go in and edit what that is. I can modify, this is the best post ever read. Okay, now what you want to see here is that you're getting this orange bar right now. Until that reaches kind of a green area, it's not the best optimized blog post meta description that you can have. And you can see this is what you would see if you did a Google search and that showed up. You'd want to have a little bit more information drawing users into your article. So you'd want to kind of continue to write more and more and more until you saw this turn green. Now it's not saying that that's the best copy, but it's saying that that is the optimal length for a description that people are going to want to see to possibly click on your post. Now if you do too much, you're going to see it's going to start to turn orange again. Now it's saying, oh, you've gone too far. So that's Google only allows so many words and characters before it cuts it off. So just have just the right amount in there, find what that is, and have a very good description. Now, it doesn't have to be exactly what's in your post, but it should be pulling something very similar to that. That's going to make readers want to come in. Some other things you can do is you can go on the side over here, you can have, when you link this link into Facebook, you can have what that title looks like in Facebook. So it can maybe be slightly different. You can also pull in a different image for Facebook. Some different things that you can use for SEO purposes. Again, we'll get into more of the details of Yoast SEO later on, but for right now, know that that's what that does, and that's a great plugin. There are other ones that do this and do it just as well, maybe better, maybe has other bells and whistles on it. This is the one mostly used by most bloggers and is very popular. The other thing it does up here, you can see that these two got put up here. We're saying the readability of this needs improvement, and the SEO is non-existent. So we'll get into all that stuff a little bit later on here. All right, so I've been talking a lot about security and commenting and things like that. One other plugin that I would definitely recommend is going to be, if I go to add new, I'll leave that post, is going to be a program or a plugin called WordFence. And what this does is really locks down your blog and does a lot of cool things. Actually, it also will do a scan for malware and viruses, which is very important. I've used to fix hacked sites before. The version right now that we can download is free, but then they can also, there's a paid version that can do a lot of extra things that are very cool and definitely worth the money. I think I have that for one website. I don't have it for all my websites. Most I just run the free version of it, but this is a great plugin as far as helping to control hacking and just really securing your website. So we've activated it's still thinking there. So we're activating that now. It takes a little bit to do because it does do so much. So over here on the left-hand side, you're going to see WordFence has its own option within the dashboard here. You will want to maybe tweak it out a little bit here. Ask you for your name and information to get into, to save, to notify you of any kind of alerts or things that come up with it. Go ahead and enter that information, but again, by default, it'll actually lock down your site pretty well for the most part. You can go into the firewall and you can start to fine-tune that. You can also go into the scan, where it's going to scan your website for everything from outdated plugins to code that looks like it might be malicious on your website. A lot of great options here. Out of the box, it runs perfectly, but you can then go in and really fine-tune it. So those are some of the main plugins that I would use just for any kind of website. In the next video, we'll go through a couple that I would use for blogging and just more specifically for blogging. So stay tuned. When it comes to blogging, there are some other plugins that I recommend that are more specific to bloggers and things that they want to do. Now, one note I want to make before we go too far is you need to be careful of the number of plugins that you use to run your website. The less you have, the better. The more that you have, the more it slows down your website. It'll affect your SEO, and the more conflicts you have potential for having. Each of these plugins will use a form of JavaScript and CSS and things like that. For the most part, they play well together. But again, the more that you have, the more chances are that there is something that may conflict. Not each of these are built by expert programmers. You may get one or two that kind of sneak in there that are just built by average people who maybe don't have the best intentions or are just not the best programmers, and they will conflict with other things. So definitely be careful of that and definitely limit the number that you use. So with that being said, here are a couple other plugins that I like to use as a blogger. Some you can even use this as a regular website, but again, a little bit more specific to bloggers. So I'll say add new. And it's actually one of the ones that are called out right here. It's called Jetpack by WordPress. I'm not going to go all the way through it right now because what you need to do is you first install it and then you connect it to a WordPress.com account. So you'll have to sign up with WordPress.com. You don't have to use it. You just need to have that username. And what it does is it gives you all sorts of really cool analytics about your website, telling you where people are coming from, what posts people are going to, the number of visitors, all that kind of stuff. It will also give you all sorts of additional widgets, things in the sidebar of your website, pop-up builders, all sorts of really cool options. I think there's even a paid version of it now where you can get it to back up your website offsite and do all sorts of other things too. So Jetpack is really kind of like a Swiss Army tool of plugins where it can give you all sorts of really cool added functionality to your website. A lot of bloggers use it. And there's a lot of functions that you can turn on and off within it. So play around with it and definitely, turn off anything that you're not using within it because it will slow the site down a little bit because there are so many features and it is such a big plugin. But it's a great plugin for the different things that you could be doing. Another one that I like to use, and this is, we'll do a kind of a sample search right here for, I don't know the exact name of it, so it's going to be social share. Okay, what I want to do is I want to have icons that are at the bottom of my blog post and kind of allow people to share my blog post if they like it. So there's a whole bunch of options, as you can see, because I just typed in a keyword. I want to go through like what I would go through if I didn't know exactly what I was looking for here. So as you can see, I just typed in a keyword and it came up with however it decides to display these things. I think it's maybe by, I don't know if it's a rating or what. So you, maybe just by keyword, probably in the title. And you can see if one of the first things I look at is the number of stars it gets, which can be a little bit deceiving because you want to see like, how many people are actually voting for that. And then how many people are actually using it or have actively installed it. So for this one, we've got 200,000 installs and like pretty much all 5-star ratings here. These guys have 60,000 with a lot of good stars. So really any of these, I'd say in the first 2-3 rows that you're looking at here would be a great option. But you know what? I really don't know what I'm looking for here. This is the first time I've looked for this plugin. I want to see maybe more of what it looks like or, read a little bit more about it. So what you can do is you can click on the More Details button here and it comes with a pop-up that's going to show you some of the information about it. A lot of times I like to go to screenshots so I can kind of see what am I going to get into here. Is this really what I want? Oh, this is kind of cool. There's some different styles of buttons that I could add. Description looks pretty easy to do. It's got really good reviews. So that's a good possibility. I don't know what this one is. I'll click on More Details for this one. Here's some screenshots. Again, this is kind of cool. It's got those little buttons with account numbers next to them. I don't know. That's kind of cool. And you can go through and do that for all these different ones here. And once you find the one that you do like, you just simply click Install Now like we have for all the others. So I'll say Install Now. And then activate. And keep in mind, just like I always say about the themes, the plugins are always going to work a little bit differently. When you install a plugin, see this one's still thinking up here. When you install a plugin, it may show in the sidebar over here. It may get hidden underneath settings or underneath tools, underneath appearance or something like that. So if you don't see it right away, a lot of times what I'll do is I'll go to plugins and I'll see my installed plugins. And I'll go ahead and scroll down and say, okay, so here's the settings. You can usually, most of these will have a settings option and they'll go right to the plugin. And then it'll kind of highlight where you're at so you know where to find it next time. So that one now turned red. I know this plugin has its own little call out on the left hand side. And it looks like this one just walks me right through which icons do I want to show on my website. Just do Facebook and Twitter. So that's cool. I'll keep that on. This is for premium. Looks like you can do a paid version of this. We'll stick with the free one for now. Yeah, that all looks good. Cool. Save all settings. Now you can read through this one. I'm just kind of doing this one a little bit quickly. I've actually used this one before and I like it. But so now within the, if I've done this right, within the blog post itself, oops, I didn't finish adding it properly here. Oh, where shall they be displayed? Show icons after post. There we go. So I'll save that. And again, just kind of doing this fast for examples. You can choose your own. There's a whole bunch there to choose from. Yeah, it's still not showing up there. So again, I got to go through each of these steps here for it to be displayed properly. I'm just trying to knock this out quickly for you so you can see. But there were the area, the option where you could choose what they actually look like. There we go. So here's all the different options. So that's kind of cool. Shared dark, shared light. That's kind of fun. Black grunge looks like I can pay to upload to those. So I'll save that. So there's all my plugins and things like that. One other one that you may want to do, and I talked about Jetpack as being the showing you all the different analytics, but really you want to use Google Analytics as well, maybe either in tandem with or in replacement of Jetpack, because you can get a lot more detailed information from Google Analytics, and there are a whole bunch of different ways that you can add your Google Analytics. We'll go through that more specifically here in the next video, but a plugin that I would recommend for that is if we went to Add New, there's a great plugin called Monster Insights. See this fun little icon right there. You can see it's been downloaded by over 1 million people. It's got a pretty good rating, and say install now. And again, you don't like this one, try a different one. But there are some cool options within this we'll get into when we get into the Google Analytics portion of this and getting into some of the advanced SEO. But those are kind of the core ones that I would recommend right now. If you ever want to look for other ones, there are some great places to do it. You can simply Google WordPress plugin and then the keyword of what you're looking for. You may find what you're looking for. Some people sell plugins from their website. There's also another website that I use called codecanyon.net. And here we can go into WordPress and we can see all sorts of plugins that they sell here. These are, anywhere from $5 to $40, I would say, that they range from, and they have all sorts of great integration. These are actually pretty well filtered out from any kind of crap plugins. And these are all very good ones. You can see ratings on some of these. Looks like this one adds functionality to allow for Coinbase into your shopping cart for WooCommerce. We'll get into all that a little bit later on here, but some great options for plugins, a whole bunch of free ones. Start there. If you're still not finding what you're looking for, check out a site like this or just simply Google it.